Hey everyone, this is Christopher. This week we decided to do something just a little different. Instead of releasing a regularly scheduled main pod episode, we decided to release a bonus episode from the Lot 1 Podcast After Show. Now, normally these episodes are on our Patreon, and in order to gain access to them, you must be a subscriber and supporter of the podcast on our Patreon of, I believe it's the $5 tier or higher. These episodes are awesome. Essentially, they are a bonus episode to the main episode. The after show is about 20 to 45 minutes, depends on the guest, and they're a little bit more laid back. We get to know the people a little bit better. It's, hair down, get a glass of whiskey, and just hang out. And also, sometimes me and Deji have extra questions that we had in the main pod that we didn't have time to get to. So we focus on them in the after show. So if you're not a subscriber of the Lot 1 Podcast Patreon, make sure you go check it out. It's really awesome. There's a lot of great value on there. You get to get access to the main pod episodes early. You get the after show and so much more. So go and check it out. It's awesome. All the proceeds there go directly to funding the Lot 1 podcast. As Deji would say, it keeps the Lot 1 podcast lights on. So go check it out. As for the rest of this year, next week on our regularly scheduled time, we are releasing the yearly Lot 1 podcast holiday episode with me, yours truly, and Deji. It's a lot of fun. We just kick back, talk about the year, talk about what's happening, where we think the industry is going, and have some fun holiday games at the end of it. After that, we're taking a break, and we will return with our regularly scheduled podcast episodes starting January 14th. So please, 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 we didn't disappear. We've recorded lots of episodes, lots of great guests coming up. So make sure you stick around and keep an eye out. And I hope you guys all have a great holiday, whether you celebrate it or not. Spend some time with some family, drink some eggnog, and have a blast. From all of us here at the Lot 1 Podcast, thank you for your support. Enjoy this amazing bonus episode from the Lot 1 Podcast After Show. Check out the Patreon, and happy holidays to you all. Thank you.
Hey, and welcome to the Lot 1 Podcast After Show. I'm Deji Boncole.
And I'm Christopher Henley.
Today, we're going to continue our conversation with Scott Edwards. Oh boy, you guys ready for this one? Because we're going to get into his favorite campaigns, how he's an effective leader, and how he handles creative challenges, and also more about Gordon Ramsay. I mean, because who doesn't love Gordon Ramsay? You know what I'm saying?
I sure do.
Oh, I know you do. You love Gordon Ramsay. So let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lot 1 After Show. We're here with Scott Edwards, who's been really gracious to give us his time. And if you haven't listened to the regular podcast,
what are you doing?
Pause this. Yeah, just pause it real quick. Go over there, give it a quick listen, and then just jump right back over here because you're eating dessert first. And you should be eating your dinner first. Okay, so thank you for being on this show with us. How was the podcast for you? Was it as
the podcast was great?
Okay.
And it was no, and I'm not saying that because we're on the after show. I'm saying it because
it's okay. Even if you
call us out,
we
if
love
you hate it, just
it.
say it. Let's go.
Because it's conversational, and I think I think that is where people are most disarmed and maybe more candid and honest and able to share genuine perspective on things. And I felt you guys are immediately disarming, and it's very welcoming environment. And you're asking great. I read the questions in advance, but you were asking them in a way and in an order that helped me tell those answers or offer those pieces of feedback. So yeah, it was so far so good. Now I figured for the after party or after show, we would have cognacs out of frame and stogies. And I don't know if
you think this was water. This has been vodka the entire time.
Yeah, this is vodka, you guys.
Yeah, just pure vodka.
Exactly, yeah, vodka on the rocks. So what is it? What's the biggest draw for you to be in this position that you're in right now?
I genuinely like the creative process behind the scenes, the offline editorial process, the coordinating all the different assets across the campaign process, the privilege and pleasure that comes with working at incredibly high level high functioning, creative leaders. I have a head of operations, a head of Viz, which is our design team, a head of AV that are so good at what they do that being with them is a pleasure. I mean, their team members are super strong. And so there's some satisfaction in being around the elite performers.
Yeah.
It reminds me of being on the agency side when you're at a really good agency. And I had lunch with a guy that owns and runs AV Squad last week. And we were talking about one of the editors that works there. And this applies to all the editors that work there. But one in particular, I made a joke about, I loved going in and watching cuts in his bay, because he would show me a cut and I would stand up and I'd say, Greg, you make my job so easy. And I just walk out. Like, I got nothing for you here. Like, let's get the proper title in there and let's send it to the client. And that's true of Tommy and Greg and Brian and everybody I had the privilege of working with when I was there. And that doesn't mean it's always like that. There are times where you're trying to solve something creatively.
Yeah.
But I was sent a 4-minute cut today for something. It's a 360 campaign submission. And I was sent the cut and I watched it through and I had a few thoughts. And I didn't want to write the thoughts out in an email and send them back. This person's down the hall by 3 offices.
Yeah.
I walked by her office and said, hey, Brandy, can you run down and we'll go through it together? I have 3 thoughts. One's a suggestion, one's a question, and 2 are suggestions.
Yeah.
And then I popped by Brian's office, she rolls up to Brian and he's head of AV. And I said, hey, we're going to watch this. If you haven't seen it too many times and you could endure it one more time, let's go through it, because I know it's 4.5 minutes. And he came down and I scrubbed it. And I said, here are my thoughts. This line, this scene, this ending, would we be able to do this, this, and this? What do you think of switching this? And in having that conversation, my one question, I was met with the answer of, here's why that won't work. And that came to me while we discussed it and I scrubbed it. So we had a little back and forth. It wasn't like they were not willing to try it. They'll try anything. They love trying new stuff, right? They're open to anyone's feedback, because if it makes it stronger, that's the goal. Yeah. And so that 3-person quick collaboration that happened for 15 minutes was really rewarding on a season 3 behind the scenes look at something, or a season 2 summation of a campaign. And so it doesn't really matter. I no longer work in theatrical marketing. All my theatrical references of my own career are at least 10 years old. And that's that's a decade, right?
Yeah.
So, I have trailers I've worked on that I loved and I told them very dear to me, but they're not the most recent current references, right? Like my theatrical reel is dated, but my TV reel is very current.
Yeah.
But it's not about, am I working on the biggest things? It's not about, am I at the biggest shop or am I with the best talent? It's, am I with a team that loves working together?
Yeah.
Do we love what we do? And there are editors here who could easily go get a job at an agency working on movies, other streamers, other networks, but they stay here because they love the people they work with. They love the creative process. Doesn't really matter what they're working on. They just like making something that's really compelling out of materials they're given. So that I identify with that. When that one editor told that to me, that's why he loves working on working in this field. I identify with that. I really like the satisfaction of a truly connected team experience. That's just satisfying. Not about ego. Maybe it was earlier, but it's not about that. It's about, do you really enjoy doing what you do with the people you do it with? Yeah. Great. You're winning, right?
Sounds That's like awesome. Signs of a really great boss there, Scott. A great leader. I know that's really cool. And it's great to always have people around you too who understand that, you're not there to be like, this is terrible. It's more just like, we're collaborating. And so to have people too that will have answers for you and won't fight you just because, well, I like this better. It's like, no, this is why I can't do this.
Yeah. When I say, what about, are these beats in the right order? And they say, if you move that, you have to move this with it. Something else. And I go, those are attached. Yeah, that has to go. And if you do that, then this doesn't make sense here. Thanks for letting me have this out loud discussion, because it solves the inquiry, right? And I think to your point, it's about willingness to try things, but it's also about experience and knowledge and insight enough to know the things you don't necessarily need to execute to find out they won't work, because you've done enough of it to say, if I move that beat, this thing unravels. So there's a reason that's where it is. You understand how the line is threaded through the structure of the cut. And sometimes you can move things around easily. Sometimes you can't, because it's that beat is meant to be toward the end. That beat's meant to be toward the beginning because of the emotional cadence of the piece, right?
What's the biggest determining factor or the thing that you notice when you're dealing with high
Performing or
like
individual?
high performing individuals versus like not necessarily not high performing, but like
Competent?
like in situations where there's like, it's not been as good and you are like, oh, this is really, really good. In those, like, what are those key factors that you notice that are the differences in between those two?
I had 2 trailers presented to me about a month ago going into the upfront. And they said, we have 2 options for you for this upfront trailer for this new show called Rescue High Surf. And we watched the first one together in here. And I was like, okay, and you're telling me you have 2 great options? I can't wait to see the next one because this one's incredible. So if they're both great, I can't imagine how you follow this one with anything better. And then we watched the second one, and the minute it ends, I pointed at my screen and I go, that one. And they started laughing because that one was cut by somebody who has the very instincts and characteristics that you hope for in every editor that works on anything. And that is a storytelling instinct, an emotional instinct, a timing instinct, a visual aesthetic taste or instinct for the most compelling images, the right sound design, the right amount of sound design, and not thinking, I got to pour everything I can into this, but having some sense of restraint at the same time, being judicious with your choices, knowing that what you choose has to serve forward and intensify your narrative and cause it to escalate, but knowing you can put some turns in there along the way. There are so many different characteristics in great storytellers. And I think some of the big ones are they are capable of working, or they work with a fundamental question or principle or idea behind the cut. So there's a purpose behind the choices they're making. Like, I really want this to be about this theme or this character or this message or this idea or this feeling. And they revolve around and orbit around a central idea as they move through their creative choices. The shots they choose, the audio they choose, the shots they don't choose, the audio they don't use, the audio they choose to omit, the inherent cadence of something, right? These things that we work on, songs have this, cuts have this, sculptors would tell you the thing they're sculpting has this. It has an inherent form it is trying to take shape in, right? It's trying to reveal itself. And so I think when you get into an edit or when you're designing a one sheet or a key art for something or a billboard, there's what's the right amount and what is it? Deciding what and how much of something you need to put into it in order for it to be its most compelling, most powerful version of itself, right? And a lot of people just pour it all in there. I call it a Yahtzee spot where they just take everything and they throw it in the timeline and they go, it's great. And you're like, no, it's just a bunch of stuff assembled in some degree or to some degree. And the same thing happens. You've seen that, tell a focused story, not tell every story. It's a trailer, a promo. It's not the movie or the show. Right. Same thing for the key art. And our head of key art on the design team, his name's Michael Bassett. He and Alexia are really great at reminding people in meetings, hey, the key art's not supposed to do everything. The key art's supposed to do some things, and it's really awesome when it does one thing well. And like right now, while we're having this conversation, Cheerios has a billboard that's just all yellow, and the words that say "Good morning," that's all it says, "Good morning." But the dot of the I in "Good morning" is a single Cheerio loop. That's it. It's one Cheerio on a yellow billboard with a Cheerio font, and you know exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant piece, and it shows great restraint. And it's also reflective of a brand that's been built over decades, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to have everything be in there. And that applies to print, applies to AV, applies to social, and applies to on your social platforms for your digital campaigns. You don't need to pour every asset you make into it. You could actually say, we don't need 100 assets this month. We need 4 really compelling assets, right? And so I think when people are high performers, they're great storytellers, emotionally, visually, in the audio space, whether it's composition, pop music, score, sound design, and restraint, right? That's an important point, is knowing when you don't need it.
Yeah.
And there's a great story, and if you have time for it, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Sam Mendes, director of American Beauty, famous movie, a lot of people remember this movie.
Never
it made
heard of
quite
it.
an impact when it came out.
Right? No, of course I have.
Right. So when 1 week before the movie's release, he cut a few pages of the movie out of the cut. 27 pages. He cut the opening 27 pages out of the cut of the movie. 27 pages that they had shot, they had edited, they had scripted, cast, scripted, shot, edited, took the time to film, produced it, put it in there. And he said something along the lines of, this narrative we're establishing in these 27 pages is the wrong filter to set up front for this movie experience. This movie experience isn't about that. It's not a whodunit. It's not about a court case. It's about something entirely different that's way more powerful. If we would start it off on the right foot, we don't need that. Cut it out. That is restraint. That is editorial discipline, saying, I don't need this. As a matter of fact, it's more powerful without it. Right. Yeah. So knowing when to do that is another thing.
It's very similar to when people say like, oh, like that cinematographer has the eye. And it's that you can't really you could describe a lot of ways you could describe that. But like, it's like everyone kind of understands what that means, but it's hard to describe. It's the same thing. An editor has like the editing eye, right? I completely agree. Yeah. And a great example of that, I don't know if you've seen this, but the newest trailer for Alien Romulus, it's just the tagline for the original Alien movie in a trailer. And it is so well done. Literally, it gave me chills, and trailers rarely give me chills. And I was like, whoever did this is brilliant.
I think it's motion. I don't remember. Chad and I talked about that last week. And someone, and the team across all the agencies that do big theatrical, they celebrate each other's wins. It's really great. They post it, and other people are like, that's so great. It's such a great cut. I love the copy. I love the pacing. I love the fact that in space, no one can hear you. And then it shows all the people screaming, but you don't hear
nothing.
There's some restraint, right? There's an editorial choice, an audio choice saying, look, I don't want to hear it. And that's the point. It's considered the greatest tagline in movie history, right?
Yeah, and they just used it.
Yes, it's brilliant. It's like, oh, they're going to do it. And they went right at it, but they did it in a way with a twist. They don't pay it off with the text. They pay it off with the lack of hearing the screams. Simple. It's not, it's the O of Cheerios. It's not a big choice. It's a smart choice, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I have a question though. And this came from the main pod. And I don't know if you can answer this or you want to answer this, but what is your favorite project to work on?
That I have worked on, or that I am working on?
Maybe both.
Okay.
I'll let you choose.
Let's do both. Quickly, I've produced a lot of horror trailers. And the reason I think I enjoyed those, and I've done dramas and comedies and a bunch of other stuff, and independent films. I really like indie horror fun. Indie thriller, bigger thrillers, big studio thrillers. I think prior to Fox, my favorite part about that was in the horror space or the thriller space, there's a lot of leeway in the edit, right? Oh, yeah. You're not constrained to fully explaining the story or staying true to a particular character because you're in a drama or a comedy. You're not, and there are a lot of really cool things you can do in the edit space, the producing space, or the writing space, and the sound design space to make these things really powerful, right? The reworked version of I Got 5 on it that was used in the Us trailer, correct?
Yeah, that was good.
I have that version of that song because I really enjoy that version. When you hear it, it's extra spooky. My kids are like, don't play that. It's too spooky. Daddy likes it, so I'll play it when you're not around.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool version of that song,
yeah.
Right? And so that's a thing you get to do in that space. And that translates over to some of our dramas on Fox's Air. Like bringing 911 to market was a blast because you've got these big, epic, catastrophic events, the catastrophe cell for the first episode of that season. Those were a ton of fun because you could really do fun things with the footage and with custom. We did a lot of custom music for those. We'd start with, there's nowhere to run to, baby, nowhere to hide. And then we'd pull the music out and have it get really slow and there's nowhere to run to. And you're like, oh my God. it suddenly turned very dark. Matter of fact, our trailer for the tsunami episode of 911 is surprisingly similar to what Ghostbusters will do for their trailer that just dropped. We did this trailer in 2019, and there's a 2023 trailer that dropped for Ghostbusters. And if you see them back to back, you're like, that's awfully curious. So they might have seen our trailer.
Took the best idea, right?
Yeah, song wise, edit wise, Ferris wheel wise, shooting wise. You're like, wow. You know, it was sent to me immediately saying, could these guys have been less obvious, right? So there was that. And then I also was here when we brought Empire to market. And Empire was a groundbreaking, revolutionary show that really built a narrative around a diverse cast and really dynamic characters in very interesting internal struggles, external struggles, which made the show very interesting and emotionally and dramatically compelling. And then imagine launching and marketing the show that each episode for the first 10 episodes, for the first 10 weeks, each episode's rating went up for 10 weeks in a row for its first season. And I remember week 8, Gary Newman said in a meeting, congratulations, everyone. You are now setting records that can never be broken. And he's right. No show since then has done something like this. And we're like, this show's amazing. Second season kind of lost some of its viewership because the show went in some directions the fan base didn't necessarily love as much. But it held on for six or seven really great seasons. And we did Gotham, which the people that made Gotham didn't give the best presentation when it came to the pitch meeting or the tone meeting where they explain how they're going to approach shooting it, how they're going to approach the color correction or the casting, the wardrobe or the apartments or the settings and the art direction, all that camera work. You're like, okay, I think I get what they're going to do. Then they delivered the footage and we're like, holy shit, this show looks great. These characters are really into the comic space. So bringing Gotham to market was a ton of fun because we were working with such rich material. And it's also a known world. That's an IP that's known, right? The city and the characters and whatever. So those are a ton of fun. Interestingly, I don't know why this is the case. So You Think You Can Dance. It's not really my wheelhouse as a show, right? It's not like I got to watch that and that's the next dance show that's on air. But the music that is good for the marketing of So You Think You Can Dance is kind of some of the music that I would listen to, kind of electronica or groovy or hip hop. And so every now and then I'll come across a track that I'm like, oh, that might be good for So You Think You Can Dance. I'll pitch it to the team. We'll take a swing at it. And it's very satisfying to see a song that you wouldn't necessarily think to couple with this show because it's not in the show. How it elevates the footage. And then you take that editor that just gets it, that's got the editorial eye, and you say, hey, could you do a version using a song like this where you cut from one shot to the next, but the action's a continuous piece of action from dance to dance to dance to dance to the seamless dance, even though you're showing every dancer. So you got to find a jump that turns into the splits, that turns into a girl twirling, that turns into a girl in a wheelchair twirling, that turns into this gesture, that turns into a leap, that turns into a land. And he nailed it. And he did it way better than I pitched it. Right. And so there's something about any of the shows being successfully brought to life in short marketing form when you said it earlier, when all the cylinders are firing and you're really nailing it and you feel that engine humming in great unison and great rhythm. That's very satisfying. Long answer. I do not give short answers.
That's okay.
We're here for it. We're here for the long answers. I thought that answer was a little short, to be honest. Yes. So what's you're over a lot of things, a lot of different projects. How do you sort of manage things sort of coming at you left and right? I mean, there's so many shows that are happening. There's so many things that are, 7,500, assets going out a year. How do you manage that all?
I'm near 1,000 emails behind right now in my inbox.
Jeez.
I emailed somebody from a month ago. They listened to a different podcast and sent me a really nice note. And I wrote them today. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm chasing my emails. Some of them I just can't respond to. I don't need to respond to. Some of them people think I'm just not responsive. But if it's a critical email internally, I have already responded. But there's so many other ones that I cannot keep up with. So, and I've read the studies about there's focus, task management, there's priority. You know, my MIT, my most important task of the day is this, that I got to get done. Here are my secondary tasks, all that time boxing. I get all those management techniques. It is an avalanche of distraction and multitasking, which is not a real thing. It's just task switching, right? So I try to do less task switching. Like I used to, only if I do a lunch walk, do I call and talk to my wife during the day. If she doesn't hear from me, she knows I'm in the thick of it. There's an editor at AV Squad named Adrian Case, and I'd go by his, knock on his door, open the door. I go, hey, Adrian, we're going to walk down to Chipotle and grab lunch. This is when we're on Sunset. You want to join us? And he would look at me with this look. He'd go, I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone, man. And I'd be like, shut the door. laser focus on this thing.
Breaking an editor's concentration, dude. Oh.
Yeah. And like while we're in here right now, I have a thing on my door that you rotate that says out of office, welcome, please knock, or whatever. And then there's one that says do not disturb. And I rarely have it on there. But when I do that and I have a stretch of time where I can really focus on a given task, whether it's come up with a concept for a campaign, help support someone who's struggling with a creative challenge. Like we have the Super Bowl this February.
Yeah.
That is a focused destination or deadline or content platform in which you can showcase your best shows, your most important shows, your priority shows to the broadest, most borrowed audience you can get on your air. So the Super Bowl is coming. Our team will come together. We will have independent meetings with collective individuals with phones face down, talking about what are ways we can bring our shows to market in the Super Bowl as individual shows and as a collective brand sell for the network. We will explore ways to do that. We'll creatively brainstorm. We'll go off and do things about it, but we will schedule time and it'll be uninterrupted time, uninterrupted collaborative time, brainstorm time, uninterrupted individual time. And I think the other way to be effective in a leadership role, a creative role, is to understand the creative process and to understand that incubation period, which is the second of the 4 steps, is so critically important that you protect it, the elastic nature of the creative process. It can't be like, oh, a 30-second promo takes this long, does it? What if it's a really complicated show or movie? It might take this long. And a trailer that you think is going to take a long time, you stumble on a great piece of music and you put it against footage. You go, this is it. I'm going to structure this out. I'm going to start filling it in. And you might get to that solution, that first pass solution, in 5 days instead of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. And so I think knowing the elastic nature of the process, giving yourself as much time, protecting the time of the people that really are doing the work, that are doing the day in, day out creative, so, problem solving or experimentation, and allowing your team and supporting and protecting their time to have that process of experimentation in order to have those moments of discovery. I think experimentation leads to discovery, and those discoveries are what inform your choices. And you test those discoveries out to see which one's best. You have to have time. Time is the most important thing in the creative process.
Yeah.
Managing my time is difficult.
So
and clearly I'm doing a terrible job.
Right? How does your family ever see you, Scott?
Yeah. They're wondering where I am right now.
Yeah, this is true.
I teach for UCLA year round. I teach once a year for 2 months for Santa Monica College, which is great. It's so rewarding. It's killing my schedule. My workout schedule's killed. But we do protect our family time. Like I'm trying to really be good about when you're home, you're present. That doesn't mean that always happens, but trying to really be present so that you're connecting with the people around you, because human connection is really the backbone of all of this.
Yeah.
So I need it too. I need those. And I really think, and I was going to make an announcement about it this week. Some people work so hard, they don't get out of their office much. And I'm like, oh, you got to get out of your office. You got to walk around the lot or walk to lunch, or at least leave the building for 10, 15 minutes. Because I don't know if you've seen the studies of people that are in Zoom back to back or meetings versus those that have a meeting and take a walk and come back and do the creative challenge or the whatever challenge. Their brains are way more active after a short walk. You've read this before. Take a walk and you'll be better at your job. That is 100% true. It's proven. It's not like a theory. So making sure your team knows you support them taking a step back and being present to something else besides the tasks at hand, and not being one of those people that creates an environment where were you? What were you doing? Like, don't watchdog them. Don't micromanage them. That's the worst thing you could do. I worked for people like that at New Line that micromanaged everything. And if you weren't there giving the impression you were working really hard, they were on you. And I was like, this is no way to be or no way to foster a great creative environment.
Yeah.
The
Culture, man, most important. Being good to the people and good to yourself, all of that.
Yeah.
I know that we're kind of running out of time here
again.
So I just, Chris, do you have a last question you want to ask?
I had a bunch that I just forgot to write down when we were doing the main pod. So I was hoping they'd come back, but they clearly did not, because I was trying to think of something fun to do. You know, normally we ask, because we have a lot of production people or a lot of indie people or whatever, and it's like, what's some tea you can tell us of, like, when you were on set? But I don't know if that's your wheel park or.
I have done some blooper reels before, and I can tell you when the cameras are rolling, but it's not a select take that ends up in a behind the scenes, or an EPK or some custom interview or whatever, or a producer's whatever. We have some, Jamie Foxx is one of our hosts on one of our game shows, Beat SHAZAM, and he's a producer of, I believe, Alert is one of his shows that he's a producer on. And he is insanely talented, right? Like you just turn a camera on and let him go, and you have. And Gordon Ramsay could not be funnier. His foul language is not a gimmick on his shows. That's who he is. He me is a little loose with his language. Like I'm gonna have to deal with that with my kids in grade school, and they're gonna say stuff they shouldn't be saying. And it's incredibly entertaining. And it's just, he's British, right? Foul language. My wife is born in London. Foul language isn't such a big deal for people from London, right? They're like, why are you guys so sensitive to every word? I was like, well, it's okay to be sensitive to some of these words. So there are some really amazing talent on our air that are very entertaining and very willing to go that extra length when you're doing your behind the scenes. Not all talent want to be in the hot seat of answering questions about why they chose this character, why they love the show, why they're doing it, because they might not be comfortable being in front of a camera being recorded. They might want to go focus on the show and not get distracted. That's not a thing to fault them for, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on, there's some talent you handle differently than others because they come with certain sensitivities or certain time constraints because they're super busy. But interestingly, Gordon is a busy guy. So if you're going to shoot him for stuff, you've ever have a real reason to do it. And if you want a lot of his time, you might be coming at him with, hey man, we have the Super Bowl this year. This happened 2 years ago. We have the Super Bowl this year. Your show's coming after it. We're going to make sure we do some really great promos across all of our playoff football games, driving to Next Level Chef, second season. Are you on board with doing that? He's like, I'm on board. What are your ideas? And we pitched some ideas. And one of the ideas, he goes, I love that idea. And I was like, that's great. We love this idea too. So he gave us a day and a half, which is insane, right? Because he's that busy.
Wow.
So the other thing is talent really respond to strong creative and really great end products. We did a fall preview special. We had Ken Jeong and Joel McHale at a desk like they're at a newscast. Here, we're going to tell you about the new shows coming to Fox. And it's very well written by one of our team members in creative advertising, very well shot. And then we had an editing team that put together really smart cuts and smart cutaways and smart reaction shots. They loved it so much. It's like, hey, we want to do another one. We're writing another one for them. They're going to do our summer, our fall preview for next year. They're in the middle of scheduling the shooting just because they responded so well to the creative that they saw.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
That's so satisfying, right? Because then they're so like, cool. Oh yeah, what can we do for you? And we're like, oh, this is the attitude we want everybody to have. And they don't all have that attitude.
Yeah.
I cannot name the ones that don't have that attitude, but I'll give you their initials and give you rhymes with. No, I
won't. Wow, thank you so much, Scott, for coming on the after show.
Likewise.
This was a blast.
Been great.
Yeah, this was
really fun.
Man,
really fun.
And nice. I'm glad we did it earlier, and it's nice that we're wrapping up because you can see I'm losing my light.
You're losing your light.
I'm being lit like Oracle light.
Yeah. You're starting to learn. You're starting to put all the practicals on in the back. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think your key light went out, man. I think you gotta.
Yeah, I waved my hand. I got a light down here. Yeah, my key light. What's going on? It's great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
For the people who skipped the dinner and just went straight to dessert,
Shame.
where can people find you?
LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Scott Edwards at LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, whatever that is, and I'll have there'll be a Fox Studios photo, I'm sure. And,
awesome.
Oh, he's famous. You'll see him. Don't worry.
You'll find me.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope you have a good.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the time, you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
And that's a wrap for the Lot 1 podcast after show.
Huge thanks to Scott Edwards for going on a big adventure with us, and an extra special shout out to our Patreon supporters. Your exclusive access to this after show makes it all possible.
Connect with us on Instagram, TikTok at the Lot 1 podcast. That is the LOT1 podcast for exclusive behind the scenes content. And hey, we are always open to listener mail and questions. Check out Lot 1 Productions at lot1productions.com. That is LOT1productions.com for the latest updates on all of our projects.
Until next time, Patreon family, stay creative, dream big, and remember, sometimes all you got to do is just trust the process. We'll see you on the next after show.
See you then.
Good night.
Good night.